Hi everybody, I'm here to kind of talk you through the gray analysis booklet, the one about analyzing quotes and facts. And I have done a little bit of color coding to make life easier in this lesson, and you are welcome to also annotate and highlight or color code just like I did. You can not annotate at all, or you can use a different color set. And I'm going to be as concise as possible, but I apologize if this video gets a little bit long. So before this video, I'm assuming that you kind of know what analysis is a little bit and have started to think about how you could analyze in an essay or a short answer section of a test or in another writing genre completely. So I'm not going to talk much about what analysis is, and we're going to dive straight in. So the first step in analysis is to lead into a quote or fact or statistic. This is also called embedding or transitioning into a quote. And we do this because if you don't do anything to transition into a quote, you're going to be considered random, and the reader might not know where you're really going with this or how they're supposed to be reading or interpreting what you're presenting. So we're giving the reader a short transition from the answer or the topic sentence into that quote. It could be a full sentence or just part of a sentence that works together with the quote to make one complete sentence. And I'll show you an example in a moment if that doesn't make sense yet. The general formula is that you're going to give me either an answer or a topic sentence, and then some sort of lead-in, and then that cited quote or that fact itself. So here's an example. If I'm writing maybe a literary analysis paragraph about the Harry Potter books, and my topic sentence or my first answer sentence was, the Harry Potter books have a consistent theme of bravery. Maybe my prompt was about theme or something. I've given my general answer, but now I want something in between that answer and my quote in blue. So I'm going to say, the author hints at this theme in book 1 when Dumbledore praises Gryffindor for bravery in a speech. Now, I have presented the reader with some sense of what is happening in the book at the time that this quote was said. Dumbledore says, "It takes a great deal of courage to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends." And that's on page 197, and we'll talk about that citing format in a moment. So you have all kinds of options for how you could lead into that quote, but I have at least done something to hold your hand as a listener and give you a sense of what I'm doing with this quote. You've got more than one sentence starter you could use. You could say that one example occurs when blah, or according to the author, blah, 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 blah. Or evidence of something or other includes, or blank is seen, or blank is revealed when blah. So there's no one right way to lead in, but you have to do something to transition into your fact. Once you've done that, you can actually state that fact or state that quote and cite it correctly. Every once in a while, you might not be expected to cite. You might just get away with giving a reason, but I'm giving you an example of a time when you have to cite. And I'm also basing all of this on MLA rules as opposed to APA or Chicago or something else. So, big note, you have to cite anything that comes from a source outside your brain. You can't just forget to give credit, because that could be plagiarism and you could automatically fail or have a massive consequence academically. So anyway, moving on. Once you've led into your quote, go ahead and say it. You can give me a direct quote or you can paraphrase it in your own words. If you're not sure how to format that in-text citation, I gave you some reminders over here for basic books, articles, and web pages. If you need to look at a different type of medium, whether that's a journal or a database or even a tweet, you can go to the Purdue OWL, and they can pretty much tell you how to cite anything. They're my favorite MLA source. So anywho, let's pretend that I want to just do a formal lead-in separate from the fact. I can do that. I can just say a sentence like my Harry Potter example. separate sentence, and then a separate quote. Or I'm allowed to transition into the quote in a little bit more of a partial or half and half manner. Check out this nonfiction example. Stress has a far more serious impact on most students than they realize, especially during tests. When the brain feels that a difficult test is, and then all of a sudden my quote starts, a threat, something for which we're not equipped, our performance is likely to deteriorate. Citation. So this is an example of a partial sentence lead-in with a quote that finishes the sentence or finishes the thought. I'm allowed to do that, have a sentence that's half lead-in and half quote. That's okay. So we've led in, and you've got two options for how you actually say your fact. So now let's do the fun part and do some true analysis. The clarify and explain steps are where true analysis takes place. Because the problem is, your reader may or may not understand the quote or the fact that you just bombed on them. You have to break it down and pretend your reader is stupid, even if they're not like a teacher. So after the quote, spend at least one sentence clarifying what that fact means. You could paraphrase your fact and put it in plain English so it's easier to understand. You can define any vocabulary words in that quote that were hard. Or you could give context for what was happening in the book at the time of the quote. And we started to do that earlier in my Harry Potter example, but we'll really do that now. I explain those more over here, if you don't really know what I just said. And another option is you can suggest what is implied or unsaid. You can give your own interpretation of that fact or that quote if your quote leaves room for a double meaning or something. So let's go back to Harry Potter again. I already let in. Here's my quote, that excerpt from Dumbledore's speech, and now I'm going to break it down or clarify it for the reader so there's no doubt about what's happening. Here, Dumbledore is referring to Neville's brave moment of standing up to Harry. Oh, I get it. So, having courage to stand up to our friends makes more sense because Neville stood up to his friend, Harry. And Dumbledore is, like, praising that. Okay. Now this quote makes a little more sense. I have clarified it in some way. Of course, there are other ways you can clarify. You can use actual sentence starters and transition words, like in other words, or blah means that blah, or it's implied that blank, or the dialogue suggests that blank. And these are just, again, a few ways you could do it. So I let in, I said my quote, I broke it down into plain English, and now the fun part. This is my favorite step, and arguably the most important one. Now that you've said it and explained it, now you gotta tell me why it matters. This is the part that's true analysis. If I had to just pick one step of the process to call analysis, it would be this. You've gotta sell me on why this quote applies to something or why I care. You could relate your content back to the topic sentence of the paragraph, to the thesis statement of an essay. You could tell me why it relates to the reader or somebody else, like why a specific person should care. Or you can relate it back to like the plot or a theme or a character or some controversial issue that I'm writing about, some sort of topic. Okay, and I explain those more over here if you need more help with that. So now let's go back to our stress example. If I've given you a quote, now I can clarify that the author says that the brain will lose its ability to focus and remember facts even if the person had studied. Okay, well that sounds kind of bad, but now I'm going to really give you a whammy with the explanation step. This fact is significant for all students because it suggests that work ethic and study skills are not enough to succeed on tests. The student needs to stay calm too. So in this explanation or analysis step, I have very bluntly stated that all students have to care about stress and not just some. And even people who work hard and study a lot might still be in trouble if they let stress get to them. Yikes. So you can use sentence starters with keywords like crucial or supports or is evidence of blank or is significant for or this fact is important because. Cool. Now at this point, you've almost got an entire paragraph. Now you just need to wrap it up somehow. If you end it abruptly, that could be bad depending on your genre. So you need to either conclude and end the paragraph completely or transition into your next fact and your next set of the analysis process, especially if you're citing more than one thing in the same paragraph. So you can kind of blend the topic sentence back in. The evidence suggests that student stress levels have large consequences that need to be taken more seriously. So that just blends and connects back to the topic sentence and gives a little bit of a circular feel to the paragraph. Or I can just transition, like in Harry Potter. In addition to the first novel, the rest of the books in the series continue to give examples of characters whose brave acts make a big difference. So the word continue and the phrase rest of the books and characters plural, all of those keywords hint that in future paragraphs I'm going to bring up even more examples of how Harry Potter teaches bravery. Now, I left this page of the booklet blank for a variety of reasons, so you could write whatever you want here. I personally wrote in a checklist for myself because by this point, once I have concluded or transitioned, I like to remind myself, okay, am I done? Do I have at least 5 sentences? Have I correctly done my citation and formatted it perfectly for whatever I just cited? Is it formal? If it's not formal or it doesn't matter, cool. But if it is supposed to be formal, I should maybe avoid personal pronouns like me and I and you. Did I follow the directions and answer the prompt, question, thesis, or topic sentence? Have I actually done what I was supposed to, or did I get off topic? And finally, did I proofread? Is this my best writing, and does the grammar all make sense? Or am I turning in slop because I really didn't take the time to proofread before actually turning it in? So in case you were wondering what all this looks like put together, instead of in choppy little pieces across the pages, boom. Here are 2 fully analyzed examples. Here's our Harry Potter one that we were talking about and our nonfiction stress one. So let's take a look at what this process looks like from start to finish. And again, you've seen these sentences already, but now they're back to back. So if this is a body paragraph of a lit analysis essay, the Harry Potter series has a consistent theme of bravery. The author directly hints at this theme in book 1 when Dumbledore praises Gryffindor for bravery in a speech. It takes a great deal of courage to stand up for our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. Here, Dumbledore is referring to Neville's brave moment of standing up to Harry. Since Dumbledore is rewarding Neville's bravery and not just the bravery of the main character, readers are being told that both big and small acts of bravery are important. When Dumbledore gives points to Gryffindor for multiple characters' bravery and helps them take the lead in the House Cup, his support is further proof that bravery will pay off eventually. In addition to the first novel, the rest of the books in the series continue to give examples of characters whose brave acts make a big difference. Ta-da! So here's the colors in action. Same thing when you're not talking about literature anymore. Here's my nonfiction research paper. This could be the single body paragraph, or maybe this is an extended response on a test or something. Stress has a far more serious impact on most students than they realize, especially during tests. When the brain feels that a difficult test is a threat, something for which we are not equipped, our performance is likely to deteriorate. Specifically, the author says the brain will lose its ability to focus and remember facts, even if the person had studied. This fact is significant for all students because it suggests that work ethic and study skills are not enough to succeed on tests. The student needs to stay calm, too. If students, teachers, and parents don't do enough to prevent stress, then test scores and student confidence will go down. The evidence suggests that student stress levels have large enough consequences that need to be taken seriously. Boom. So, if you look at kind of a big view of these two paragraphs, notice that they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sentences long-ish a piece, assuming I've counted right. And the biggest differences are that this one has a separate lead-in sentence and then a separate complete quote, and this one does that half and half thing. They both spend the most time in the explanation pink step of analysis, the one that I said is true analysis, where you really sell the reader on why we should care. This will vary in the professional world, but to me, I think this is important and worth doing right. This is where a lot of your sentences may come from. And they both have some sort of transition or conclusion. I think this one's more of a transition and this one's more of a conclusion, but that's just me. So, I hope this was helpful, but if you need to think about it in a different way for it to make sense, or if you ever have a teacher who wants to teach it in a different format other than this formula, there are other ways to think about it. Different teachers use different acronyms or metaphors to teach analysis. For example, you've got ICE, R, peel, roots, stems, and leaves, 3 questions, and so what? But guys, notice that no matter which method you are using, they all follow a very similar pattern with very similar ingredients. You're still doing some extent of lead in, say it, and talk about it. You're doing some extent of what does it say, what does it mean, why does it matter? Or so what, or why do we care? So to many teachers across several grade levels, high school, college, whatever, if you only give an answer, you're probably not done. You need to do something to analyze, explain, and almost persuade as to why your answer is right, or why it makes sense, or why it's plausible. And that's what's going to quickly improve your grade, make you a better writer, and pay off to any reader who's checking out your work. Thank you very much for watching and for your attention and your patience. If you have any questions, make sure you ask somebody or you can watch this video again. Good luck.